And I'm Katie, and we are still married. And Allan just reminded me that I cannot make any more mistakes because otherwise he does not want to redo this intro.
We've had to redo the intro a few times. I want A, not to redo it anymore, and B, not to edit anything. So no ums. You can't say a single
You just twice.
Well, those were example ums.
Oh,
and a third, yes. So, Katie, I wasn't even on this interview. So what are we about to hear?
I sat down with Chris Rich and we talked about mixed faith marriage. We talked about the wins that she's had. And she talks a lot about what we can do to help ourselves and look at ourselves through a different lens. And I think it'll be super powerful and helpful in reframing the way we think about mixed faith marriage.
I like when we do these less than normal. It's not a couple versus couple interview. It's one-on-one. And in this case, it is one-on-one believing spouses. So two believing spouses talking about their experiences in a mixed faith marriage.
Right. But I think that a lot of what she says can be adapted to both sides. And especially she's learned a lot of really cool things. So I think you'll love this interview. And today it's her birthday. It's releasing on her birthday. So happy birthday, Chris. Just what you wanted.
Nope, not going to do it.
Nope, you're not going to do it.
Happy birthday, Chris.
And we want to go through a couple announcements, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I would make this one announcement because this is a really fun one. Go on to Facebook in the announcements feed right now. The top announcement on the 5th/6th of January 2021 are links to all 4 of the Marco Polo groups. We just put that up today. I don't even know if you knew I did that. I put that up today. I realized, there's been a few threads about a Marco Polo group for post-Mormon women and for believing women and for believing husbands. I created one for post-Mormon husbands. I just created a little post and made all 4. Here's the links to all 4 of them.
What if I'm like a Jehovah Witness wife?
Oh, come on. They're not in our Facebook group.
They might be.
They might be. Okay, but it's believing versus non-believing.
Are we going to have just an other?
It doesn't have to be Mormon, okay? Believing versus non-believing.
Okay, there we go. Believing versus non-believing. The other thing...
We love our JW friends.
Yes, we do. We love all of you who are not LDS. There's a lot of non-LDS listeners. So,
hi, Ann Buckle in Nashville.
Yes, hi, Ann. And everyone else out there.
Of course.
The other announcement we want to make is that we are coming close to our time that we're going to start January 19th, another workshop on a tightrope with Natasha Helfer.
We partner with Natasha Helfer?
It is hard to believe that she said...
The one and only.
It is hard to believe that she said yes to us.
I'll tell you, you guys, if you are even remotely considering or remotely think that you could use the professional help of Natasha Helfer, this is absolutely a wonderful way to get it done. Because over the course of 6 weeks, you get 18 hours live with Natasha. And then you throw in 18 hours live of Katie and Allan. It kind of cancels itself out, to be honest. But then you have 18 hours of live session over 6 weeks with other couples who are in the same experience as you are. We have a few spots left. I would have to actually count.
We have a number of people that are enrolled. We have a couple of spots left, and we have a very generous donor who is offering 2 half scholarships for anyone who is in financial need and would like to take the class. So take advantage of that and email us if that's something that you're interested in.
What's our email address?
It is marriageonatightrope@gmail.com. You can contact us via Facebook, via Instagram. Really, there's no wrong way to contact us unless you show up on our doorstep. And if you do, please bring us some Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yes, that would be great.
That's the requirement.
That would be great.
Also, we wanted to give a shout out to those mentors. We have a mentor program through our Facebook, and we just want to say thank you so much. If you would like to be a mentor, you can go and click on that. Is it a button?
Yeah, there's like a mentorship section within the Facebook group. Both to sign up to be a mentor, and basically it's like a Big Brother program. It's exactly hey, right. I've been through this before. I kind of know how you feel. Do you have any questions? Let's chat about it. So if you are in need of advice or have advice to give, you can sign up, maybe even both.
Yeah. So thanks to all of you, and we just appreciate all the work you do.
I appreciate the work they do more.
I said we.
Well, it's a competition at this point.
No, I will win.
Usually you do. We hope you enjoy this episode, everyone.
And now we would love to welcome to the podcast, Chris Rich. Chris, thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited to have this opportunity.
Oh, it's just the ladies today. So I'm not sure how many men are going to want to listen to this. I hope that they tune in to do so, because I think Chris has some super valuable things to tell us and teach us and to help us with. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us maybe where you're from, where you currently live, how many kids you have.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Salt Lake City, and I was an elementary ed teacher for a couple of years when we first got married. My husband, Matt, he also grew up in Salt Lake, and we have 3 beautiful kids. We love to run together. I love to eat probably more than I love to run. We live in Western Massachusetts now. We've been here for about 10 years and we've also lived in Indiana. We've kind of bounced around the country. And yeah, we love it here. It's a good spot to be. He works for Lego, the toy company.
So what does he do at Lego? Does he create sets?
He is on the sales team there. He works with a team of other people on the Walmart account. So,
okay. So do you get free Legos? That's what I want to ask.
Sometimes. So he comes home. He loves Legos. So we have lots of Legos at our house.
Oh, I love Legos as well. In fact, my husband and I we went to the Lego store, and they've got the coolest things now. And of course, like, I want every set because I'm super into it. It's like the Disneyland castle. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh yeah. It's awesome.
That is the one I want. And, I'm looking at it, and the salesperson is so good. She said, those are going out of stock starting in March, and they're not coming back. I'm like, okay, that just sold me right there. Not so much my husband, who was standing next to me, but I'm like, honey, we could get the Lego set. No, not so much.
That's awesome. So
well,
fun.
I mean, if you work for Lego, it must be a passion. So that's really neat. And I love that you run and eat. And you're right. Usually you would need to run after you eat a lot of really good food.
Yeah.
So tell me about your upbringing here in Utah, because I think I'm actually interested. I think that the church might look different a little bit more in the East than it does in the West. And I'll get to that. But tell me did you grow up in the church?
Yeah. So my family was very active in the church, and several generations of members. And it was just something that we did as a family. And, growing up, all my friends were just like me. It was, like the schools that I went to, there were lots of members, and something that we did together as a family. I don't know that I had a super strong testimony growing up. It was more kind of a social thing that I went, and because that's what we did, and my friends were there, and it was fun. And then as I grew up, I ended up serving a mission, and I think that's kind of what solidified my testimony, because I realized, like, okay, so this is what my parents believe, and now I'm halfway across the world. I was in Taiwan, and I had to find out, is this really what I believe? And I think that's probably what my mission really solidified my testimony, and just the experiences that I had there.
Sure. And you grew up during a time back where, not to age us, because you and I are older than the younger generation now, but when you're 21 and you're going on a mission, there are one of two things that people say. One, either you couldn't get married before, and that's why you're going, or two, that you had really nothing else going on. And I never felt that way. I always felt that, like, for me, a mission was on my checklist. Was it on your checklist, or was that something? No. So how did you arrive at that decision? Kind of funny. In hindsight, I feel like it was almost like my kids were up there saying, Mom, you got to go figure this out. And it was just kind of a sudden decision that I hadn't been planning, because I thought the same thing, and I actually was dating someone at the time and realized, like,
I'm going to go do this. I want to go do this for me. And I'm so glad that I did, because I feel like I really gained valuable experiences there, learning to communicate and being with people that might see things differently than you do. And it was just I'm so thankful that I had that experience.
Yeah. So you get home from your mission, and then what happens?
So it did not work out with the person I had been dating. And then most of my friends were already married at the ripe old age of 22, 23. And I had a mutual friend that when he needed a date, he would ask me. And when I needed a date, would take each other to parties and stuff. And he had this cute friend named Matt Rich. And that's how Matt and I met each other. Well, we actually went to the same high school. I was a year older, and you know how you're so much cooler back then.
So much cooler.
So cool. So that Matt and I met each other through this friend and just started having a good time hanging out together. We like to ski together, and he made me laugh, and that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
So how long did you date before you decided to get married? And then where did you get married?
February of 1998 is when we decided we wanted to get married. And we got married in June of 98 in the Salt Lake Temple. So it was a very, very fast, I think our story is similar to a lot of other people. It was a very quick engagement.
Take us to like early marriage years. Did you notice that you guys did things differently right off the bat? Were you pretty much on the same page? And like, I always think it's funny because even if you're the same religion, every Mormon household does things differently, right? So Allan could watch sports on Sunday. I couldn't, but I could watch movies on Sunday. He couldn't. So did you, in those first like few years, what was your styles within the church itself?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think you assume that, you grew up in the church and I did as well. So I think I had the assumption that we were going to do everything the same. So our first several years, we did things differently. Like I was 100% all in, that I loved, like when we went on vacation, I would go find a chapel and I'd want to go to sacrament meeting, and he was like, really? And it was just like little things like that where I was like, oh, we do things differently. But there were just not big things, but there was I loved teaching lessons and going ministering and being in my callings. And he wasn't, he did it, but it wasn't, I think I got a lot more joy out of it than he did. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. There were definitely things that we didn't see eye to eye on, but nothing that was a big deal. We just kind of made it work for us.
Yeah. So take us to the point where he starts to transition out. And at this point of the interview, I'll tell all of you, spoiler alert, it was Matt who transitioned out. And we're going to focus on Chris's story, but I do want to get to that because obviously it's a big part of the change that happens in your home. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
We had been married for about 8 years. I don't even remember, but before that, maybe a year before that, I noticed like he didn't go to elders quorum, or he would come home for part of church, but he was there. And just one day, what kind of seemed like out of the blue for me, he just said, I'm done with church. And for him, it was kind of, like it was a gradual, he had kind of been pulling away gradually. And I didn't realize at the time, and it was just shocking and devastating for me to just be like, where did that come from? But looking back, it's like, yeah, I can kind of see that he wasn't as excited about it as I was, but I had no idea the extent of where it would take him. It didn't seem like it was that big of a deal at the time. And then I was like, oh, wow, and he wasn't offended. He hadn't gotten into like anti-Mormon literature or anything. He just realized like, this isn't what I want to do. So it wasn't, and I think it's easy to look and think like, are they leaving because they did something wrong or they want to go do something wrong? I think at the time I thought that. I didn't, but for him, it just wasn't his thing. And that was really devastating for me I didn't see that at the time. I was just like, I think the church is, you're on the same, when you're both in the church, you're on the same page and it's like a safety net for you. And all of a sudden I felt like that safety net had just been ripped out from underneath us. And it was scary because it's like, okay, well, if you're going to leave the church, what is going to happen next? And he wasn't doing anything, but I just had so many fears about, like, well, what is this going to look like? Are you going to make different choices than you normally make? Or what will this look like for our family in the future? Or if you can do that, then what else could happen? So it was just devastating to me.
And okay, so I like what you said about like having the safety net, because I think in the church, the safety net always feels there, right? When you're on the same page, you're like, well, we are going to make it to the celestial kingdom because we were married in the temple, or, well, the safety net is there. And if I take my kids to church, they're going to learn the gospel principles and things are going to be good for our future. And so I like what you said, taking the safety net away makes you ask all these, have all these questions in your mind. At the time, were you brave enough to ask him those questions? Were you brave enough to say, are you, all the things that you think, like, okay, are you looking at pornography? Now, these are the things that was asked of my husband. So I'm just I'll put those out there. Are you looking at pornography? Are you gay? That's the question he got. Are you looking at anti-Mormon material? Are you, you get these sort of gambit, because for a lot of people who are in the church, I think that they think like, well, sin would be the only reason why they would have to leave something that they loved. So tell me, how did those conversations go in the beginning for you?
They didn't. I was so scared and so worried that I didn't ask. And one of the things I was, like I mentioned earlier, I felt like I lost my trust in him. And I was so worried about what was going to happen next. And, it's fascinating. Worry it's always about a future event. It's about something that hasn't happened yet. And it feels terrible. Worry is a negative emotion. And so I spent all this time worrying about what was going to happen in the future. And most of those things didn't happen. So I worried for no reason. And some of the things that I was worried about, some of those things have happened. But then I got to feel that yuckiness twice. Yeah, worry's not it's not very helpful.
I do want to know, like, what did those initial conversations look like for you guys? Or did you just completely avoid it?
He wasn't really interested in talking about it, and we avoided it a lot. And I think one of the big reasons why we avoided it, I was looking at my life and being like, okay, you are doing all the things. And I couldn't possibly understand why he wasn't doing those things. And I totally felt like a huge victim. And I turned him into a villain. So I turned this man that is the love of my life, all of a sudden, just because he tells me he doesn't want to go to church, I don't trust him anymore. And I painted him as this villain. This isn't really rocket science, but that's not a really great dynamic in marriage, is to think you're married to the villain. So I didn't ask. And I was so focused on my pain and how I constantly had the thought, this isn't what I signed up for. It's not supposed to be like this. And so instead of investigating, like, And also I missed this huge opportunity. He was in pain too. When he was the villain, I didn't care about his pain. I was totally focused on my pain. And so I didn't ask. I didn't ask, like, okay, what is this like for you? And how can we make this work? I was just like, I'm doing all the things and you're not. And I was being so judgmental of him, judging him for how I thought he should live his life in a religion that wasn't for him. And which made me not live my religion, because here I am just completely judging him. And that's not what I want to be. So that felt horrible that I was judging him. And just when you think that the person that you live with is a villain, I didn't, and I couldn't understand why I was so stuck. Here I am, I'm doing everything right. And he's over here doing everything wrong in my eyes. And he wasn't doing, he was wonderful. This story that I had been telling myself, that this isn't what I signed up for, it caused a lot of problems for me. And so looking back, I wish I could have stopped and said, like, how is this for you? And realize like we could both be in pain together and comfort each other. And, I think of like, we mourn with those that mourn and comfort those that stand in need of comfort. I was so focused on woe is me and how hard my life was that I just was totally blind to that. And that is a huge regret that I have. I wish I would have had. I wish I could have seen outside of my pain and tried to understand his perspective better.
I think that, wow, on both sides, everyone can relate to this, right? Because in this situation, whether you're the believer or you are the one transitioning, it is easy for you to focus on you. What am I feeling? On the other side, I'm going through this. Do you think I wanted these feelings? Do you think I wanted to leave a church? Do you think I wanted to have my whole life upended and my marriage damaged by how I feel? That's not what I want either. And I think that on both sides, you can both relate. And I think that the church, teaches us if we're doing all the checklist things, we're going to have a great life. It's going to be, it won't be wrought with, it'll have problems, right? Well, I love what you said, that because you were so worried about you couldn't focus on what living your actual religion was, right? Forgiveness, love, and compassion. And
charity.
those moments are so tender. So I can understand why you would feel that way. Tell me, how long did it take you to get to a place where you could even discuss it without things blowing up? Or, did it take a couple of years? How did you start having those conversations? Because I think people are just worried about, like, how do I even start to address this?
It's interesting looking back at this, our journey. It definitely wasn't a linear journey. We'd make some progress and then something would happen. But I don't think it even, and I'm totally embarrassed to admit this, I don't think it even occurred to me. So this has been 14 years now. I bet we were 10 years in before I was like, oh my word, were you in pain too? Like, it took a long time. Yeah, it's just, I think in hindsight, I wish I could have gone back. And I'm still realizing I've had a lot of life coaching and realizing like, oh, I think just my story that I was hanging on to, I had this lens of how my life was so hard. And I found so much evidence, like I could make a list of all these bad things that happened. And it wasn't until I could kind of loosen up that story and realize like, hold on, he is so not a villain and I'm not a victim. And I don't want to be a victim. Like, this is my story. This is my life. This is how I get to choose what kind of character I am in this. And wouldn't it be more fun that we could both be heroes together, that we could both be rock stars, and he can live his life the way he wants to, and I can live my life how I want to with my faith. And it feels so much better. But it wasn't, it's taken me years of doing a lot of stupid things. And, there are so many times where we didn't have conversations that now I think we're able to talk about things more now, but it definitely took a lot of time. And I had to get to the point where I was healing from my pain. I think that took me so much longer than needed to, just because of this story I told myself.
So let's go to that. The story you told yourself. What was that? I mean, I think you mentioned that, you were doing all the right things and he was the villain and you were the hero. How do you work through the story that you tell yourself? And what are some tools or things people can do if this is where they're stuck right now?
So I did not see myself as a hero at the time. I felt like a complete victim. Like so the story I was telling myself is, I think the main thing is, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, this is so hard. Matt Rich is ruining my life. So I think an easy way to look at it is and this isn't just in a mixed faith marriage. It could be your job. It could be your life with your kids, whatever. Look at, if you were writing a newspaper article about your life, what would the title be? Just like a quick title. So that is what I would start with. That. What are you telling yourself? One story was, this isn't what I signed up for. And then as I started to look at it differently and be like, no, I don't want to be a victim. I want to be a hero. Okay, so what is a hero going to do? Well, a hero is going to communicate and stand up and find out what's going on. Like I started talking to him and finding out and he didn't want to talk. So it wasn't like I wasn't trying, but he wasn't very open. But I think just recognizing we all have some sort of a story. And I think the big thing is that story serving you well? Is it helping you to progress in your marriage or not? For me, it was like I was on this hamster wheel of woe is me. And I was just running and running and running on that. And it wasn't serving me at all. But when I could step back and say, like, okay, this isn't what I want to believe anymore. So I would find out, like, really ask yourself, what is the story you're telling and what is the role? And if that story is helping you and helping you to find peace and happiness, then go with it. But if it's not, look at that. And I mean, now I can look back and say, like, instead of a victim and a villain, we were both two people that were hurting, and we figured out over time how to help each other and we're both heroes for each other. And now we can support each other more in that. So I look at that story you're telling and do you really want to be a victim? And do you really want to be married to a villain?
Yeah.
And in my case, I'm not at all. He's such a good guy. Such a good guy.
So let me ask you, for you, what did progression look like? Because I think progression is defined so differently in each marriage. So what did that look like for you, and how were you able to get there?
Okay, so this was probably about 10 years ago. There was a talk by President Uchtdorf at a women's conference, and he talked about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I love stories and I love chocolate. So two of my very favorite things. And Roald Dahl's one of my very favorite authors. So in his talk, he's talking about how Willy Wonka has this, I guess, a contest, and he hides 5 golden tickets within 5 candy bars all throughout the world. And the world literally goes nuts looking for this candy. People go and they buy a candy bar, and it used to be that they were so excited about having a chocolate bar, but then they'd open it up and there's no golden ticket in it. So now everyone's like, oh, bummer, it's just chocolate. I don't have a golden ticket. And people went crazy. Like my favorite character, Veruca Salt, her dad has a big factory with an assembly line, and he has all of his workers with cases and cases of chocolate, and they're going through and they're no golden ticket. And they literally just throw the chocolate aside. So I'm listening to this talk that President Uchtdorf is giving, and I just had this it was like Heavenly Father smacked me over the head with a 2x4. And so I'm like listening to this talk and just realizing, oh my word, this is totally happening in my life. That so President Uchtdorf is talking about how we all have some sort of a golden ticket, something that we want. And for me, my golden ticket was I wanted my husband to come back to church. I wanted his heart to be softened. And this is where it felt like the Heavenly Father just smacked me and said, Chris Rich, I get it. I have heard your prayers. I understand you want Matt to come back. And I need you to start focusing on the chocolate that you have in your life. You literally have a fantastic life, and it's like you are bathing in a chocolate fountain and you have no clue. I was just so focused on him and what he should be doing and how it was hurting me that I wasn't paying attention that I had a great husband that was taking care of me and our kids. And we had 3 beautiful, healthy kids. We had a house and just literally swimming in chocolate. So I think that was kind of another thing for me. It was almost like I call it the chocolate switch. When I turned on that chocolate switch and President Uchtdorf talks about you don't have to give up on your golden ticket. There's nothing wrong with having desires and expectations and hopes and dreams, but don't wait to be happy until that happens, because it might not happen, and it might not happen for a long time. And I think that literally was like a life-changing switch, my chocolate switch. And it didn't happen. It wasn't just like, bam, okay, thank you. I'm glad that I have so much to be grateful for. I had practiced these thoughts of how my life was so hard, and I had told that story over and over again for years. So it took time to refocus my attention to the good in my life and the blessings that I did have. And it wasn't, and I think that was kind of, it was kind of like if you have a big ship that you're trying to direct, so the switch went off and I said, okay, my life is actually not so bad. And I think that, and that helped me to start turning my boat back in the direction of where I wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't, it took years of redirecting my brain over and over again and focusing on the good in my life. And I think that was a big thing to help me. I stopped seeing him as a villain. I realized, like, oh my word, this man is awesome and he loves me and is helping me. And no, the church is not part of his life, but he's a wonderful father and he's teaching our kids beautiful things, and I'm teaching them beautiful things the way I want to do it. And we're both in this together. It was just, I don't know. So for me, gratitude is absolutely magical, just amazing. And I love, like, just last month when President Nelson had us focus on social media about the things we were grateful for. And I actually I love this quote he shared. Counting our blessings is far better than recounting our problems. No matter our situation, showing gratitude for our privileges is a unique, fast-acting, and long-lasting prescription. And that for me, that was huge, to just be like, I got a great life, and I need to, when I focus on what I have instead of what I don't have or what I want, then I can have what I want right now. And I think that was a huge, just a huge turning point for me.
I love the just mental visual of the chocolate factory, because you're right. Things are, I think when we focus on that one thing, it's almost like we have tunnel vision, and anything that's good around us, we can't see. When you decided to make the switch, you can call it your aha moment, your chocolate vision moment, your come to Jesus moment, your whatever, right? A lot of people use different phrases for it. What did you see? Like, what was the difference it made in yourself and in your marriage? Like, what could you tangibly see happening that was positive for you?
Well, I think it was just such a huge reminder that, like, wake up, you don't have a bad life. Like, there would have been a million people that would have been happy to switch me. I think another thing, and at the time, I don't know that I saw this so much as a positive, but I had been putting all of the blame on him for so long. But I realized, like, oh, like, yes, I am doing all the things, my checklist of things, but I have a role to play in this too. And it's not just, I was able to take some of the ownership and, like, okay, this is something I can do. I can't change him. I can't change our circumstance, but I can change my attitude. And that was empowering for me. I didn't have to wait for him to come back, because he might not. I have no idea, but I can choose what I want to think about and focus on now. It's not, I think that's another big thing, is it's my job to make me happy. And it's his job to make him happy. And when I started realizing, like, okay, I can focus on the things that are so important to me, and he can do his thing. And then we have two happy people that can come together and with all of our differences and then just love each other. That was a big help for me to realize with a lot of life coaching.
Yeah. I mean, I think that life coaches, therapists, I mean, they're out there for a reason. If we can take the tools that we are learning in those sessions, they definitely benefit us for the future, and the way we reframe things in our mind and the way we think about where we are. I want to talk a little bit about something you mentioned earlier, and maybe this pertains to your kids and maybe it doesn't. But I think earlier you said that you were worried about things that maybe did or did not happen. And some of those things did come to fruition. Okay. And I don't know what that pertains to, but how do you, I know that when we worry, we're like doing ourselves a disservice, right? Because we're needlessly causing harm to our anxiety in our mind. But when they do happen, how do we face them head on? How do we deal with those worries that do end up coming to fruition? And it may be, a kid not wanting to go to church. It may be, you can name a number of things. My husband now wants to drink coffee or alcohol. How do we talk ourselves through some of those hard things that we do worry about?
Oh, that's a tricky one. And I definitely don't have all the answers. I think for me, just realizing, like, okay, so my kids, none of them are interested in the church. And that was I've worried about that for so many years. And now to realize that, okay, they are on their path and I am on my path, and that we can still proceed together. I think it's so important to realize that people have to figure things out for themselves. And me worrying about whether they're doing it the way I think they should or not just causes me more pain. And, like, for me, I've just had to realize, like, they're having the exact experience that they need. So, like, Matt with his faith transition, is it possible that is exactly the path that he needed to become who he wants to be? And with my kids, I thought it should be this way, but it's not going that way. And just, if I keep focusing on, no, that's not how it should be, it just hurts me, and they're still going to do what they want to do anyway. And it disconnects us. I want to do things that connect me to my husband and my kids, and, like, judging them and thinking they should do it a certain way. It's just, you kind of just got to step back. And also, like, this is my situation. Obviously everyone is in a different situation. It may be that there's certain things that are going on where you say, this doesn't work for me. And I think that was a big thing for me too, is just realizing I have a choice. And there were a lot of times where, like, early on, we did talk about splitting up, and I just thought, I can't do this. And realizing, like, that is an option. And for me, I'm so thankful I didn't take that option, because we've had lots of ups and downs. Life has been a total roller coaster, but right. I'm thankful for where we're at today. And I think that's another thing is every day this totally wasn't what you asked. Every day it's a choice that I choose to love him. I choose to, someone was saying, if you could go back, would you still choose your person? And I've had days where my answer was no, I wouldn't. And I've had a lot where I'd say yes. But I think the big thing is, do I choose him today, and what that looks like? And just realizing we're all going to do things a little bit differently, and that is okay.
I know, I really appreciate that you saying that, because I think that we definitely have a set idea in our mind on how others should behave, our spouse and our children. I think that one of the more painful points of being in this area is that my family no longer looks like anyone else's family at church. And, I can wallow in that for a while. I can think like, poor me. But then it occurred to me, wow, look at how many other people that are here that also don't have families that look like mine, right? That look like the normal family. And it actually, I think some of that pain and the poor me, the victim attitude, I decided that it was better to show compassion for a lot of those people, because I knew how they felt. Right. So it goes back to what you said. The gratitude is magical. It definitely changes the way that you think and you feel about your situation, because all of a sudden you recognize other people are in the same situation as you, where if you stay in that space of the victim, you don't look outside of yourself. So I really appreciate you saying that. And, with children, especially, I have kids who we went to church today because Sunday is my favorite. It is my favorite sacrament meeting before Christmas, because it's usually very musical. It's usually all about Christ. It's very uplifting. And it was, but neither of my boys wanted to pass the sacrament. And, we've decided a long time ago that we wouldn't force them to do anything they didn't want to do. But it is a little bit painful, right? Thinking like, well, now they have to have asked two elders, two other guys to come and pass the sacrament, when my two boys are sitting on the bench and they could easily go up and do it. And I think that's hard. In the past, it's been really hard for me. But today I thought to myself, as I looked at my family, I'm so grateful that they came. They all got up. We had 9 a.m. church. They put on their church clothes. They didn't complain. They knew that I really wanted to be to this sacrament meeting because it was my favorite. And so I'm just going to be grateful that they're here and they're being quiet and they're listening to the music. Right. So I think, I just love, children, especially, they are going to have a choice, right? They are going to be able to decide in the future. And I mean, we can spend the time worrying about how our 2-year-old is going to act when he's 12, but for now we can just love them and for who they are. I absolutely love that.
I think with that too, it's easy for us to want to love a different version. It would be so much easier to love my husband or my child or whoever if they just did it according to how I think they should do it. And they don't. And that's just painful for me, because it's like, oh, well, that's never going to happen. And it's also, I think it's painful for them. So I think that's a big thing that has helped me a lot, is I just want to love Matt for exactly who he is and not for what I think he should be. And when I let go of that and just like focused on the good in him and that we were co-rock stars in our story. And that's like when, we started being able to be vulnerable with each other. And I think that was such a beautiful thing for me to realize, like, get rid of my expectations that I had. That there's a beautiful tool where called the manual. We all have like when you buy a refrigerator, it comes with a manual of all the things it should do. And we all have a manual for our spouses or our kids or our friends. Like a good husband should do all these things. And then if they don't, we think, oh, what's wrong with them? And that was a fascinating thing for me to be like, I totally have a manual. And I thought that a good husband would do all these things. And mine doesn't do those things, but it doesn't mean he's not a good husband. It's just, I had expectations, and just to be like, you know what, I just want to love him for how he is, because he's awesome. And that brought me so much peace too, to just be like, quit trying to love a different version of him. Love him for who he is. And that brought so much healing and peace into our marriage when I was able to do that. That's how God loves us, for who we are now, exactly as we are.
Can you give us some examples of things that your husband does to support you and where you're at, and vice versa, what you do to support him?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's tricky, because you're like, what do we talk about now? Because we don't talk about the church, and like, we don't have anything in common. We totally thought that. And he loves to run. He had a goal to run a marathon in every state I can't speak English, before he turned 50. And he made it to 47. He had done 47 marathons. And then COVID hit, and he had this idea. One day he came up to me and he said, hey, I have this idea to run the calendar. And he wanted to run the equivalent number of miles as to the date on the calendar. So this is back in July of this year. And so July 1st, 1 mile, July 15th, 15 miles. And by the end,
July 31st, 31 miles.
And consecutively. And I just was like, Matt Rich, you're nuts. and then I thought, this is something he wanted to do. And I just thought, what is the upside of me not supporting him? So I'm like, I think you're crazy, and I'm all in, whatever you need me to do. And so this past July, I did a lot of it with him, and I had no intention of running the whole thing with him. And I knew like that wasn't going to happen for me, but he ended up running 496 miles in the month of July. And that month was magical. I did run a lot with him, not the whole thing, but I ran a lot. I walked with him. I rode my bike with him. And that month, it gets me teary thinking of how it was just amazing. We had so much time to just spend together, and he knew I was there to support him. And the benefits of me supporting him were huge for me too. I ended up running like 270 miles. I didn't know I could do that. So just like through supporting him, we just kind of push each other to do the things that we're interested in. And it's just, as I've supported him, he's supported me. I'm just about to, I've always wanted to become a life coach, and I'll be starting that next month. And so as I support him, he supports me in the things that are important to me. And some of those things, like church still isn't his thing, but he knows it's important to me, and he supports me with what I need with that. And it's just, I think there's so many things that we do have in common that it's easy to be like, nope, this is a mixed faith marriage. We don't have anything in common. But to look for those opportunities, like what is your husband passionate about, and how can you say yes? And I'm a huge believer in supporting each other. And it just feels good. It felt so awesome to cross the finish line with him. Like we were I was totally in tears, and it was just like, that's something something sacred. It was so special to do that to be there with him. And he does
in the Massachusetts heat. You did it.
Which is so stinking hot.
It is very hot. We've been there in July. It is very, very hot and humid.
Oh, nasty. Lots of nasty laundry. But it was just, I would do that again in a heart. Don't tell him that. But I just that being all in with each other and just being there for each other feels so much better than seeing him as a villain that's trying to ruin my life, because that just wasn't true.
I another great point, because when we focus, our thoughts and our energy goes to what we focus on, right? So if that's what we focus on, that's what's going to yield from the relationship. But like you said, when you find other things that you have in common, there are other reasons why you got married. And I'm not blind to the fact that many of the marriages were rocky to start, or were difficult, were very difficult. And you put something like a faith crisis on top of it, and things, don't work out, don't pan out. But I would say for the majority of our listeners, the reason why they're listening is because they're trying to make it work. And they're trying to find a way to have those common things to do together. And I love that that's what you found you could do together, and create joy and a connection, and in being supportive to one another. And I just really think that is a good thing for our listeners to hear. If you are really struggling in this space where you're having a hard time finding something, just find one thing to connect on. It could be movies, it could be a TV series, it could be running, it could be hiking, whatever that is, and then see what blossoms from the support you give each other in those things that you can connect in. What advice do you have to those who are just starting out in this space and are maybe listening? They've been in this a couple of months. What advice would you give to a couple who are listening right now?
Oh, so after 14 years of doing that, I've got lots of advice on that. But I think to look for the good. The eye sees what the brain looks for. To focus on your story. What is the story? And what do you want? Where do you want to go? Like, if you want things to work out, you're probably going to have to make some changes, and to do it together. I think that for me, that was so hard, because I didn't talk about things with him. And I think I have the hard conversations. And I think one of the biggest things for me, I wish I would have, I had my pain, and to acknowledge that, but I wish I would have realized that he was in pain. And I think this goes on either side, that I wanted him to just validate me and say, like, I bet this is hard for you. We just both wanted to be heard. So I think to validate each other, and to realize, like, and going back to the story you tell yourself, do you really want to be married to a villain? And if you don't, then either change your story, or you're going to have to change your situation. And I think the other thing is to focus. I wanted to change him. I wanted to control him and change him and make him do it my way. And I don't know if you have a way of doing this, but it's never worked for me. Mm-hmm. And going back to just loving who they are, not who you want them to be. And then loving me and working on me. Like, I think in this time I've been able to, I wanted him to be spiritual and he wasn't. And so I've focused that on me, and I'm doing the things that are important to me. And I feel like I feel like my testimony has grown so much, because instead of trying to change him, I try to change me to be the best I can be. And I think that's another big question, is starting out, who do you want to be in this? How do you want to show up? And maybe your spouse isn't showing up how you want them to, and you can't control them, but just focusing on, who do I want to be? That was more than one piece of advice.
We will take all the advice we can get. I'm sure the listeners are not going to fault you on that. Is there anything else that we haven't already mentioned that you would like to mention or talk about in this interview?
I think another concept, so many of these things I learned from Jody Moore. If you haven't listened to the Jody Moore podcast, she's a rock star. She doesn't know, but she's my best friend. One of the things that I learned from her is the concept of 50-50. And also it talks about it in the scriptures that there's opposition in all things. And we have this like false notion that we should be happy all the time. And it flat out comes out in the scriptures, and God says, no, it's not going to be like that. There's going to be opposition. And I think just realizing that you're going to have, our brains are designed to feel good part of the time, and we're also going to not feel good, and that it's okay. It's okay when we're going through these hard times. I think it's human nature to think, oh, this is horrible. I feel worried or disappointment, and this is a big problem, and you want to flee the situation. But just to realize, like, part of the time, it's not an exact science. It's not exactly 50-50, but how about something? Part of the time, you're going to feel happy and good emotions, and part of the time you're not. And it's okay. It's okay. Like with those hard conversations, that it's okay that part of the time you don't get along and you don't see eye to eye on everything. Sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't. And it's not a problem that you're not feeling happy all the time, because no one else is either.
This reminds me, and maybe you can relate to this. When I went on my mission, I actually had zero knowledge about what a missionary does. Zero. I knew that before we left, we went and saw The Other Side of Heaven. That's what we saw in the theater, literally a couple weeks before I left. That is the envision I thought my mission would be, is the other side of heaven, where there are miraculous things happening all the time. It was going to be such a spiritual experience. And boy, did I get smacked in the face right off. And I think, and this is, most missionaries, when they come home, they talk about lots of the good parts of the mission. What they don't talk about is the hours and hours and hours of tracting or contacting or knocking doors, or, where it yields nothing, right? You literally have the worst days. But really, I think that there is such a contrast, because when you come home and everyone wants to tell about these miraculous things that happened, or these great stories that happened, because there were so many hard days, that the good ones stand out the most, right? And I think, you can relate that in your own marriage as well. There's a lot of hard days. When I got married and someone said, you're going to have hard years. And I thought, that's weird. Why would they tell me that? And it is 100% true. There are years that are just so hard. And, Allan and I, we celebrated our anniversary on Friday. And one of the things we talked about is, we talked about the highs, we talked about the lows, but we also talked about those pivotal moments. I'm going to cry this, but those like moments where you are like, okay, we're going to either choose each other and move past this, or this is going to be the end. And we have a lot of those pivotal moments. And so thinking about it, it's not always going to be your first honeymoon year of marriage. Life happens and it goes on. And, you just focus, and you're grateful for the times that things are really good, because you're going to have that opposition. So I really appreciate you saying that, because it's not always going to be good.
That 50-50 has helped me so much to just be like, okay, this is just the hard part right now, and there's going to be the good part. The other thing that I would wrap up is, I would love to give everyone a homework assignment.
Look at
what is the story you are telling you? What is the story about your marriage? And do you like it? And is it serving you well? And if it is, awesome. Keep going with it. But if it's not, if your story was like mine, where it was just causing you to disconnect from your spouse, you have the power to change it. And it wasn't my circumstance that changed, because that didn't, but it was just, I got rid of the story. This isn't what I signed up for. And no, it wasn't. But actually, there's been a lot of great things that have come from that. So, and do you like the role that you're playing in your story? And if you don't, then put yourself in a different role. How are you rocking your story? How are you a hero? And I think one of the things that, like, for me, I look at, we have come through so many challenges and we've come out on top every time. We have 100% track record for getting through our hard days. Not that there's not plenty more coming our way, but with, like, that gives me confidence instead of like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for. It's like, we got this. And whatever happens, I'm confident we're going to figure it out together. So look at your story. The other thing is look at your chocolate. Don't get rid of your golden ticket, and maybe identify, do you have a golden ticket? Maybe it's your job, maybe it's with your kids, it's your marriage or whatever, but you don't have to get rid of your golden ticket. But is it stopping you from finding the happiness you want now? And if it is, just kind of set it as, you don't have to stop looking for it, but enjoy the chocolate, because I'm guessing you have a lot of chocolate in your life too.
That is the perfect way to end. Chris, thank you so much for being on this episode of Marriage on a Tightrope. It was just the ladies this time, and I'm so glad that we had this conversation. And really, a lot of things that you taught us and brought up, and tools and questions to ask ourselves. I think those are so important. You are going to be, I mean, you're almost life coach, right?
I'm starting training next month.
So. Okay. So if people want to talk to you or connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
I'm also a mentor on the Marriage on a Tightrope page. And that has been, I think that's a great resource. So you can reach out to me on Facebook. Chris Peterson Rich is my name on there. And yeah, I'm happy to help anyone and find hope. There's so much good and hope in all this. And I'm just, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Well, I feel like
your story.
Yeah, I feel like this has been such a positive, inspiring and full of light episode. And I really appreciate for everything that you prepared and you said, because I think that this will definitely help so many people out there that are listening and ask themselves that question. What is the story you're telling yourself? So Chris, thanks for being on our episode, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks, Kattie.